Three, two, one, and we're live. I'm joined by Frederik Beck. When you introduce yourself, Fred, and let us know a bit about what you do.
Okay. So my name is Frederik, or I usually just refer to myself as Fred because it's easier for non-Scandinavian speakers to say. And I've just arrived here in Ireland, in Dublin. Been here for about a month now.
Yeah, think about that.
Yeah, and I have lived in a room that is only like 5 meters from here in your lovely little house. And now I've just gotten a little room, and I'm getting settled in Ireland.
Nice.
Yeah, and I lived in Australia before. I studied with Dave, physical alchemy, and that's probably why we're sitting here. Because I learned that system, and just to go back a little bit. So I have a formal background in medicine. I trained as a medical doctor, and then figured out somewhere along the way that I wouldn't be very good and I wasn't interested in practicing medicine. And so when I got that piece of paper, I said, okay, that's it. And then got on a plane and went to Australia. Ended up studying with Dave. And spent a good year and a bit in Sydney learning from Dave about physical alchemy, about the stretching methods, and the deeper stuff in PA. So I like to show them.
Yeah, a bit easier on the tongue.
It's easier if you have to write your name and then.
Yeah, physical alchemy. Frederik Beck, physical alchemy is a long one.
Yeah.
So, you trained to be a doctor first? What? Did you specialize in medicine, or was it just general medicine?
Yeah, so most people, if you haven't been to medical school,
I haven't.
No, you haven't. So there's this conception of there's different specialties in medicine, but to do a specialty, you have to do the general part first, like just medical school, and that's in Denmark it's 6 years, and then after that you go on to do an internship and a residency,
Gotcha.
and another 5 years, and then you're specialized. So the whole thing would be like 12 years. So
instead of specializing in surgery, you went on to specialize in physical alchemy.
Exactly.
I like it. So yeah, I mean, you studied under Dave then for a year and a half, Dave Wardman.
Yes.
Physical alchemy. If people aren't familiar with Dave, highly suggest you look him up. Fantastic system. That's actually how I met Fred. Was at one of his workshops in AM Fitness in Terenure. And it was really a fantastic weekend, kind of eye-opening seminar in itself. And also, I mean, massive group of kind of the who's who of that kind of, I guess, the people interested in that field in this part of the world, which was pretty cool.
Really it seems to be the way that we've been gifted with meeting up with a lot of high-level people, so which is a good thing. Like it certainly does something when you teach a workshop that you have high-level people and you can take things in a different direction. And I remember the Dublin thing. There was a good crowd. It was a good experience. It was a 2-day workshop as well. So
bag of cans afterwards.
Bag of cans. There was indeed a bag of cans.
Numerous bags of cans were had.
Yeah, it was like, as far as I can make out, it was like the best weather that Dublin had seen for like a year or so.
Yeah, I think it was like mid-June or something. And it was like I don't know, 200-year heat wave sort of thing. It was a perfect weekend for it. And it was. For anyone not familiar with the system, I guess it makes more sense for you to explain it a bit.
Yeah, so it's where to start.
At the beginning.
At the beginning, yeah. So the easiest, the most, say, direct way to talk about it is, say, the stretching, which is what we teach in workshops and what is accessible in classes. So Dave coined the term repatterning stretching, and then the overarching principle being repatterning. So thinking about if you're talking about a human being, a lot of what goes on in terms of the human being is governed by patterns. The idea being that many of these patterns are really, its energy is not being used as efficiently as it could. And I'm sure we're all familiar with the idea of, we overuse the pattern of sitting. So we sit a lot, hips are flexed, thoracic spine, everything collapses forward, and we get this T-Rex-like posture. Everything is just sunken in. So that is using that particular pattern too much. So looking at the body in a pattern sense more than just thinking about the pectoral muscles or the biceps, but like looking more broadly at what's going on, and then you can extend that metaphor to other things. So you can think about repatterning of posture, of gesture. So, but stretching is a very useful tool for undoing patterns in the body. So repatterning, stretching. Yeah.
So it's kind of teaching you to see things broadly, and then allowing you then, obviously, it's like almost you guys use then the stretching that you teach almost as an assessment tool for your body to see what's going on with it, I guess. Does that make sense?
Yeah, probably. It's also, so if I teach an introductory workshop or class, I'll focus on certain stretches primarily because there's everything being equal, there is a hierarchy to it. Like there's, given the way that we use our bodies in our culture, I was just talking about sitting, and you see that you could make I could make a very educated guess about, without knowing anything about a person, that probably needs to stretch his hip flexors, probably needs to do something about his piriformis, and something about the upper body, chest. But then people are different, and people do different things. You will look, like, you train people, so you will know that if you do jiu-jitsu, for instance, if you're a really high-level jiu-jitsu guy, the pattern you will see in that person is different from the pattern you will see in just a sedentary office worker.
Yeah.
And some things will work a lot better, be much more limber, and other things will definitely not be more limber. So that obviously, again, you have to go through all that stuff and figure out where your own restrictions are and work on that, rather than just taking a prescription, just like giving a recipe and like, this is the way it is.
Do
but
this.
you actually have to try a few different things. Yeah. So we can talk about stretches and which stretches are good. You have to actually go through them. So that's one part of it.
So the repatterning is not just like remapping your body to work how it should, but it's also creating that understanding during that process.
Yeah. So what should I say? A different way to think about it would be, so when you do the stretches, and one of the problems that I see with stretching is that everybody has, we've all done stretching in school, in exercise classes. It's in popular culture. Everyone has some idea about what stretching is. But then when you actually get people into a class and you try to take them through things, it's, I should say, what they conceive of stretching, or what they think is stretching, is not what I conceive of as stretching. And so the word understanding for me is a little bit troublesome because
everyone has their own.
We all have our own understanding of things, and I would rather, it's much easier to Yeah, like explain some general principles, a template. Okay, this is the way that we go about things. But it's only at the point where people actually begin doing it and begin just okay, this is actually what he's talking about, and they can actually do that thing.
Yeah.
That they begin to have an understanding, because you can explain things very very nicely, but because it's so much about our bodies and how we use it, then like nice words on a piece of paper doesn't really do that much. Like sure, it might do something for someone who's done a lot of previous work, so he has something to like latch it onto. But then I would still argue that you need that experiential thing,
Yeah,
which leads into one one of the principles. So thinking about not just what are stretches and how are you stretching, but also, so I know Dave likes to use the word qualities, and talking about what do you actually put into the stretches, which is a little, it's a departure from what most people are talking about when they talk about stretching. But if you go into a class and you have someone who walks in the door and they've done fuck all for 20 years and they don't have a history in sport, they're uncoordinated, like things are just not working.
classic couch potato.
Yeah, then when you try to take them through things, and it's the same as doing a martial arts class, when you try to take them through things, like they don't know how to move the pelvis.
Yeah.
They don't know how to move one thing and then not move another thing in the body. Like very basic physical things doesn't really work. So there is a period of just getting into it, and I would liken it to, so I've done a little bit of jiu-jitsu, and like in the beginning there's like this, it feels a little bit awkward, and it's not because you don't want to do it. It's just like where do I put myself?
Like I think actually probably a good way of putting it for someone like yourself is to learn a foreign language. I remember someone saying it to me with jiu-jitsu, that's almost, you're learning a physical language. At the beginning you can only at most say words, and then you start to figure out sentences.
Yeah. So if you extend that metaphor and you go, okay, you have a person who has done a little bit of physical stuff, then you can teach them in a different way. Like you don't have to go through the beginning rounds. Like when you teach them stretching, they'll begin to understand what you're talking about, and they can feel like, okay, I moved my pelvis there. He told me to tuck and untuck the pelvis, like do this little thing with the trunk. So then you have a different quality in the stretching. The first person, you have to tell them, okay, you go into this posture and you contract this thing and you hold it for this long. So you really have to
very structured approach.
Yeah, very structured, and you have to nudge them along. The other person, there's a little bit more freedom there, and they get what you're talking about, and they do the contractions, it feels good, and they get the stretch, and they get deeper, and they begin to work on stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a huge one. I mean, obviously we're going to spend a fair bit of time talking about stretching tonight, but it's one that I have a lot of people will come to me to, learn mobility or stretching, whatever term they want to put on it. And I'm sure, kind of touching on what you're saying, that you can have someone who appears to be stretching and appears to be working on the flexibility, but isn't.
Yes.
And that's very common, and something I see all the time. And it's something that I do. Yeah. Because your body always tries to find that path of least resistance. It's not, all right, let's get into this kind of, actually do that, like working on my hip flexors the other day. And you were like, do this. Yeah. Months of a roadblock, and you just go, do that. I'm like, oh, shit. You did a twist out, because my body was just going, I don't want to do this.
Yeah, it is like that. And it sounds like nothing. And you think that you can do it yourself. Yeah. And then you just, like, someone goes like, okay, it's this. Yeah. And you can't overpower it. Like it's just a different thing stretching with a partner and not with a partner. Yeah.
I mean, that's something that's very unique about the system that you work with, that there is
Yeah,
so much partner work.
there is, and it's like some of it obviously comes out of so physical alchemy. Dave was taught and had an apprenticeship with Kit years and years back.
That's Kit Lachlan for
Kit
anyone
Lachlan, yeah,
unaware.
and I've learned from Kit as well. So
No
stretch therapy was what Dave took, and then sort of went in a different direction with physical alchemy. But it's probably useful at this point in the conversation to make it very clear that when we're talking about partner stretching in this way, that we're not talking about, like, a lot of people will have a picture in the mind of circus stretching in Eastern Europe, where you have people being forced into splits.
Someone jumping on your back.
Someone jumping on your back and doing. I've also seen like horrible small videos of gymnastic girls in different countries. Like it's only the Eastern Bloc.
I mean, there's even the classic one I remember of sumo wrestlers doing it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, I was doing like pancakes, and the sumo wrestlers literally like, jumping on the guy's back and I'm screaming in pain.
Yeah. So that's not what.
It's not what they do.
No. So the partner stuff is inherently safe if you do it right. It's also one of the reasons why you need good instruction.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a very skillful system.
It is a skillful system. It also it feels much nicer if you have an experienced person who can give the assistance in the correct way, not push too far, but also see where things doesn't want to move and go that thing. Yeah, there was some association. I lost my thread.
Don't worry, it happens.
Okay.
Like, I mean, to give people an idea of how effective this sort of work can be, and also how pleasant it is, that when I was on that workshop, I mean, I think bar one other occasion, it was the furthest my pancake has ever developed, as in the furthest I've ever reached before, and that was in like 5 minutes of work, of partner work, and I think the only problem that I've ever seen with physical alchemy is not having the instructors.
Yeah,
that's it.
That's it.
Because it's like any of these things, like you were saying earlier, that, you know, when you don't have someone there to explain, right, here's what you need to do, then people will go like, oh, I got this.
Yeah, that's the thing that I just forgot about. So if I've seen increasingly on social media, Instagram, people doing partner things where I'm a little bit horrified, where it's like that person has seen something and think that they know what they're doing, and then I can look at the thing and go, fuck. Just, that's...
Yeah, I mean, because like any example of what you will see within that the physical alchemy system, there's things that you look at and go like, holy shit, there's this massive guy like sitting on this other guy's back, but you don't understand what exactly is going on in that position.
No, that's the problem. That's the problem with Instagram or social media more broadly. Like, if you have something where you're focusing on sensation and you're focusing on the person who's being stretched has a process that he goes through, then it's very hard to put that into a picture that represents what's actually going on. Like, you can have a picture that looks very nice, and you have 5 people stretching,
black and white image, and they're getting stretched in every direction.
All that stuff. Like, you can make it look nice, but it doesn't actually say anything about what's going on.
Yeah.
And especially if you then have people who haven't been trained properly, and then they see some of that stuff, and then you just it's a bit of a train wreck.
Well, I think kind of touching on that, and even what I was saying earlier, that during that workshop, that was one of the furthest my pancakes has ever gone. But when I said, that happened in only 5 minutes, that was in 5 minutes of stretching.
Yes.
That's, I think, the part that people they always rush to see the results. So even when they do a stretch, they rush to get the end result. And that was one thing that really blew my mind. That when Dave was explaining the concept of cooking someone, and we don't mean the cannibal sense. It's a very specific term that you guys mean by that.
Yeah. So, as I was talking about the qualities before, start with someone who is a rank beginner, and you give them instructions about, okay, here's the stretch, try to do these contractions, try to move in this way. You get someone who's a bit more experienced. You begin to explain the cooking thing, and they can do more, and they know a little bit more how to move. And it's probably at that point that they begin to get a little bit more of a sense of the cooking in quotation marks.
Air quotes.
So the cooking thing is, usually there will be three or four phases to a stretch. You will, very, very briefly, you will go into a stretch. You'll go from nothing, like no stretch sensation. You very, very slowly approach the stretch. So that slow process rather than just going wham into it. Then you have an active phase of doing contractions, moving around, doing more contractions, relaxing, contract, relax, so on and so forth. And then once you're at the point where you've done contractions, you're not going any, you cannot go any further, or it doesn't feel safe to go any further. At that point, in other ways of stretching, you just simply go, no, I'm done. Here, we like to go further, and this is like the cooking metaphor. Like we like to spend as much time as we can in the extended range. If we go back to the map metaphor, the remapping metaphor, this is the part where you actually get to spend some time exploring the dark areas of the map.
Right.
So it's about spending time there, and it's about spending quality time there.
Yeah, I mean that's a term that I've used with people I train a lot. I always say like find the corners, like take any stretch you want, like classical, like a toe touch. It's one reason why I'm very like, no, you shouldn't be in like this very strict, you must do this, you must have a posture this way and that way, because often you'll kind of, want of a better term, just wiggle and move and see, like, oh, this is fine, but maybe if I turn this way, oh, there's something not so good there. Let me work on this. I think that's the really really interesting part with what you guys do, that you're not just teaching the person how to go about finding that, but also teaching a partner how to help them find that.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the partnering, I should say, is a hugely important bit, and it's a little bit overlooked. But there's many things that goes into the partnering. If you do stretching with a person and you get a person who is good at partnering, it feels very, very different to partnering up with someone who's not that good. So it's very easy to experience. Okay, it's actually very, very different. I get very different results if I stretch with a person who has more experience, knows what he's doing. There's also something about size matters. Like, if I'm 90 something kilos, preferably I want to stretch with someone who's roughly the same size as me, at least for some stretches. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into partnering. The way you touch, the way, are you slow enough? Can you use leverage to your advantage? So I was talking about weight, but you can, if you're not that big, you can definitely use your body in an intelligent way so it feels nice. And you can also have someone who's really big but doesn't understand leverage and then end up doing crappy partnering.
Yeah.
So it's all like the partner stuff. When you are stretching someone and you're experiencing the partnering, it's very, very plain to be, okay, this feels nice. You might not be able to explain why it feels nice.
Yeah.
There's certainly parameters around it that I tell people. Whenever it's possible, and when you have to apply force with through your arms, always go for straight arms if it's possible. If it's possible, then get in and make contact with the person. So rather than relying on arm and leg strength, actually put your torso in contact with the other person. which also, if you are in a stretch position, which is a dangerous situation to the body, like what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Why am I in this position? The more points of contact you have with things, the more proprioception you have, the more paradoxically relaxing it feels. Which it sounds like hoo-ha until you actually experience it. It goes like, it feels nice.
I mean, I had someone even explain that phenomenon with me in a very simple way, and for anyone who doesn't kind of understand what we're getting at here, get into any, I don't know, kneel on a wooden floor and then kneel on a cushion on the wooden floor. It's the same idea that the more things you have in contact, the more comfortable your body feels, the more willing then you are to explore that area.
Exactly.
And especially when you have partners, and obviously when they're not, jumping on you and elbowing you in the back, when they're actually, allowing you to get into that position, guiding you, it makes a massive, massive difference. And it's, I mean, it's, obviously it might come across as a bit suspect of two trainers saying that, you should learn this stuff and find someone who can show it to you, because like I have a lot of people who come to me to want to learn mobility stuff, whatever, and you're trying to say to them, or to anyone really, that like, yes, you can learn stuff, you can YouTube stuff, whatever, but until, like you're explaining here, that until you actually feel those sensations and understand what it is you're trying to feel, and if you don't have someone there to guide you, it's very difficult. I mean, you can, even from personal experience, I've wasted years on certain stretches trying to find out what worked.
Yeah, so there's a there's a process to it. And this is a very, very, very big proviso, but if you know how a stretch works and you have tried it with a partner many, many, many times, you can to some extent recreate it by yourself. It will not be as good as with a partner, but you can, if you have that in your body and you know how it's supposed to feel, you can do some of that stuff yourself. But going the other way, so trying to making it happen by yourself in your own body is much, much, much harder. So even if you have someone who knows, like, okay, I don't want to spend that much time exploring stretching, probably be better off just spending some time in the beginning, just getting that experience a few times and getting in there and working on things.
Just feeling comfortable.
Just almost feeling, almost.
Almost. Yeah, I mean that's the big thing with whatever you want to call it, stretching, mobility work. That the big one I always see, and it's drives me up the wall with the whole fitness industry, is that you get this no pain, no gain mentality, and when it comes to doing this stuff, like we say, the more comfortable you are, the more you'll benefit from it. So obviously, being in pain is not a very beneficial thing whatsoever.
No, there's a curious thing with sensations, put it that way. So pain is one thing, and then there's intensity. Like you can have a very, very strong stretch, and you can get very, very strong feedback from your body. But if you've done it enough, and you don't have overt injuries, and you know yourself enough, you'll be very, very, very clear whether that thing is injurious or whether it's not injurious. So yeah, but the no pain, no gain, just plowing ahead, and regardless of what's happening, it's not where I would start. Like there's also just the question of sport, which is like if you're pursuing something to the highest level, then no pain, no gain is probably the way to go about it in certain circumstances. Like certain sports have a high injury rate, and you have to play even though you're kind of in an injured state.
This is true.
But it's not a mentality I like to cultivate with the people that I train.
But I mean, even I work with a lot of combat athletes, and a large part of it, I forget who said it, but I remember someone saying it to me that the life of a combat athlete is that you're always injured, you're always hurt. And by that I don't mean you have a broken arm every day or a broken hand, but you might have bruised shins or black eye, whatever. But to me, the responsibility of a trainer is to mitigate that as much as possible. And I think, yeah, it's a tough one when it comes to sport, because especially at the high levels, because to reach the loftiest goals, it also requires the most sacrifice.
Requires sacrifice, yeah.
And that can, take a massive toll on anyone. And I mean, I've seen some of the most talented people in a lot of disciplines burn out very, at very early stages.
Yeah.
And I suppose for most, I don't know how to put it, but most people within the general population that you want to kind of train to last, that's kind of the term I like to use. It's that you don't, like I had a guy who came to me, was an elderly man, but all he wanted to do is be able to squat down onto the floor just so he could play with his grandchildren. Simple as that. And to me, that's what most people want.
Probably. Yeah.
And it's also...
for me, personally, if the motivation is there, that's a very, very worthwhile person to train.
Yeah.
If the motivation is not there and there's excuses and then it stops a week later, then it's not very easy to work with.
I mean, it's a really hard thing to learn as a trainer, and I think anyone who's listening to this will also understand this concept that if someone doesn't want to change, they won't.
No, that's
even if, I mean, I've had people come to classes that have held or workshops or whatever, and they're saying like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do X and Y and Z, but I don't want to do the work. And you're kind of going, well,
good luck with that.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. You go do that, but you won't see results. You won't find the benefit from those things, and it's I guess like we were saying earlier, it's that kind of instant gratification that people look for, and especially when it comes to flexibility. I mean, it's quite odd. I mean, I've seen very, very good trainers say like, oh, mobility is the hardest thing to do, and mobility is flexibility, whatever term they use, is it's the hardest part of my training or whatever. And I'm kind of thinking like, that's the easiest part for me, because no matter what state I'm in, I can still get down the floor and roll about and stretch and move a bit. I mean, I've had some bad injuries, and I mean that's the only thing that I've been able to consistently do. And it's like, it's slowly paying off, but that's the thing I think that puts most people off, is that it's very slow. And I think
there's a few points there. So one thing is that in the greater scheme of things, flexibility training broadly, not talking only about physical alchemy at the moment, but just talking about stretching, quotation marks, is quite, it's not as well understood as other types of physical activity.
Yeah.
So if you look at strength and conditioning, like much of that stuff, like we know about, we know how it works, and like sure, there's like little things, like little topics that we can argue aimlessly about, like whether it's that way or
God, let's be having an argue.
Yeah, and we can look at studies and all that stuff, but it's like the people got strong before the internet.
Yeah.
And then like the Soviets did a lot of stuff in the 50s and 60s, and like the increments now upon that are small.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even like we were talking only a few weeks ago about old-time strongmen, and many of them, the records still stand. Hundreds of years later.
They had the most rudimentary training protocols. Like they were insane.
Yeah,
like
they didn't know nutrition or any of this carry on.
No, like just trained like madmen for 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. Didn't know anything about physiology. Didn't know anything about supplements. Just whack, whack, whack. So, like, I respect that mentality, and I respect like just at some point, like, yes, you should read certain things, but at some point you have to just put it down and just go, okay, just train. So there is that. With stretching, it's only now that things are beginning to become a little bit more clear about how things work. So I think that's part of the confusion of people going, okay, I do this thing, I'm not getting more flexible. So because it's not as well appreciated as other things, there's some mystique, and people think that you can't change. then it does take time. Like it, I know my friend Emmett. He talks about like there being certain benchmarks of flexibility, and you can have like 3 or 4 stages before you're ridiculously flexible.
Yeah.
And to move up one level, to put it that way, he will say that's about 18 months. So I think it's part of it is just people having unreasonable expectations about how much you can improve.
I think if we even took that in like a weightlifting world, if you wanted to set a massive new PR, that probably will be the same. You know,
it
a
would.
year and
It
a
would.
half
It's
to do
just
something.
like because people feel that it's different from other types of stretch or other types of training, that you can expect something completely different.
Yeah.
Whereas if you actually just put your head down and actually work on it for a while, then you're very likely to see results. Some of it is probably also not being consistent with what you do. So you might be consistent with stretching, but then you do this stretch, and then next week you do another, and then you do another, and do another.
Not targeting what you want.
Yeah. So if and when I teach beginners and they're not interested in the system per se, or they don't want to explore it more, but they just like would like a little bit to work on, and then maybe down the road they want So Nathan is offering me more whiskey, so gladly.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Writers Tears. Get in touch, guys, if you want to sponsor us. There was actually an analogy that I'd thought about for a while that I thought applies very well to flexibility of there's a guy talking about evolution and about, you know, you look at an ape and you look at a human and you say like, no. Like some people just go, no, there's no way we came from that. But he used the example of, imagine you had a phone book of pictures of every generation. You know, say like 1,000 pages, and you flick through and you start with the chimp and you end with a human. He said each page you wouldn't really notice much. Maybe like a tiny thing changes here, a little less hair, and then by the end of it you have a human.
Yes.
And I kind of liken that to flexibility, that like
you don't
it's
look
almost
more
millimeter,
flexible from day to day, but
that like a year and a half down the line, then you go like, wow,
yes,
like that's a big difference.
It's much easier to work with people who appreciate that.
Yeah. Like
because you whatever the whatever the hell you're interested in working on,
whatever it is,
regardless of whether it's strength or stretching or poetry or painting, whatever it is, like you need consistency.
Yeah.
Like there is gifted people. There is gifted people who can do things innately better than other people.
Yeah.
But in the long run, it's always having consistency and applying yourself, which is just like, if you have that instant gratification thing that you're talking about, like it's people don't want to hear it.
No.
But it's there's that thing.
But I mean,
definitely.
I've seen countless people joke about that, especially a lot of hand balancers. I know always joke about that, and you know, they're saying it's like, oh my god, like you must be so talented. You must have always been able to do X, Y, and Z. You're like, no, I work on it every day. Oh, you must be so talented. It's like, no, I spend a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
Like I get that a lot because when I started, you know, my flexibility journey, whatever you want to call it, like I could barely touch my knees.
Yeah.
It was because I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and MMA and stuff, and I was like, right, I need to get flexible. And now I can, you know, pull off my okay-ish splits and do, you know, plenty of those flexibility benchmarks, and I couldn't. And it's funny, like that kind of step-by-step approach. I remember I was training a guy, a kickboxer, recently turned pro, and I remember he's the same. He couldn't touch his toes, you know, to save his life. And he came in, we were training one day, he's warming up, just kind of, you know, touching his feet and walking his hands around on the floor. And I just went like, what the fuck, man? He's like, what? He's like, you couldn't touch your toes last month. And he's like, oh yeah. And just went back to doing what he's doing. I think it's like that weird thing of flexibility that it is so incremental that you don't kind of notice those drastic changes that when they do happen.
Yeah, and then it occurs a little bit in class, and when you stretch people, and then like you will apply a stretch, you'll go a little bit further, but that a little bit further might only be like, if you look at the person, it doesn't look like anything is changing. Like they might move a millimeter, or they might they might tilt their pelvis 0.5 degrees more. But then, like, if the internal experience of that thing is completely different, it's like Like you can look at the person, like they might be talking a little bit before, and then like all of a sudden they're curiously quiet, curiously quiet, and like the face changes, and like the whole body will tense up a little bit, and like everything changes very very quickly from that like 0.1 millimeter, which is it's just the nature of it.
For anyone listening, obviously Fred's like smile on his face talking about this is fantastic.
Yeah,
and it's
I like it.
Yeah, I mean that's
I like
why
seeing it happen, and I like it happening to myself. So
Yeah.
I'll say like I also do these things myself, and
Of
I've had that experience many times. So
I mean, any great teacher I know, they usually are their own guinea pig in a lot of ways.
yeah, it has to be.
I mean, that's the thing I love about what you guys do as well, about the physical alchemy system, that it's actually, yesterday I was chatting with Phil Norman, who's a boxing, kind of kickboxing coach, and he was saying about his own system, the way it's constantly evolving, they're constantly trying to break it. And what he meant by that is that wherever there's a hole, wherever there's something that can change, we try to fix it.
Yeah.
And that's what I love about physical alchemy. Like, I always see Dave every few days, he's like, oh, I just figured out how to stretch this thing over this thing, or it's some mad contraption he's come up with. And it's why I really love it about what you guys do, that it's constantly evolving, and it's that kind of aliveness.
It has to be, like, you have to question what you do and try new things, and like down the road you'll probably, like 99.9% or something like that, you will reject and go, okay, it was kind of cool, but or it might be cool for some. It's often the case that some things are very cool for some people, but not for others.
Yeah. I like the example earlier, like the grandfather getting down the floor. He just wants to get down the floor. He doesn't need to learn the splits, and I think that's something. A lot of people. I don't know, like a lot of people get kind of confused when it comes to mobility training and flexibility training. That like, you have your own needs. I chase these odd goals, like splits, because I want to, whereas, like I don't know, a general office worker, they might just want to be able to bend down and tie their shoelaces.
Yeah.
Something as simple as that, or not have pain in their lower back from whatever. It doesn't have to be these crazy lofty goals. And then we talk about, and again, coming back to the Instagram thing, people see these crazy flexibility goals that people have achieved over time. And if you don't want to do those, you don't have to do those.
No, you don't. And it ties into the thing I've been talking about like a few times, as the qualities that you put into things. Like very few people will get pancake and front splits and side splits and bridges and handstands, all these benchmarks, if I put them that way. Like there's positions that I would definitely, if I'm training a person, I want basically everyone to get a squat, just because it allows you to do so many things, and it's one of those things where it's useful to look at things like the studies where people go, okay, people who can't get on and off the floor without hand assistance are much worse off. So it's just like, everyone should have a squat. I'm not saying it should be perfect, but just getting that
be able to do it.
Then coming back to the qualities thing, getting people to have the experience of stretching and getting into their bodies and like, okay, I can do a strong contraction that feels okay, the first stage. Then coming into getting an appreciation for the cooking thing. So getting a stretch, doing it hard, just sitting with it for a time, and then eventually moving on to figuring out, okay, we have this base position, and then we try to change things a little bit, and that's an individual thing, and it's not, definitely it's useful to know anatomy, especially for a teacher, but it's not like you sit there with Netter's Atlas of Anatomy and then you go like, okay, the hip flexor attaches here and then that muscle attaches here, and therefore I want to stretch in these fibers, then I should do this angulation.
That's something I get really annoyed by with certain trainers, that they almost show off with like, oh, I know so much anatomy, whereas like
you need to know something, and it's like we can go down that tangent later on, but so talking about the so like Dave likes to call it intuition, but it's basically being enough in your body that you can feel, okay, it wants and it needs to go this way, and it might be like if we're talking about a hip flexor stretch, it might be off the classic line ever so slightly, and you might incline the trunk in a certain way. It also has to do with having control enough. Like you can engage one part of your body, you can engage the thigh, but you can relax the trunk. While you do a little bit of an inclination, while you do something with the breath, while you have someone sitting on you, all those things.
Yeah, I mean, adding variables to
adding
the
variables,
position
and
you're used to.
it puts things into the body which, once you're past the stage of you can do a squat, and like, I'd rather put that into people. Yeah. And sure, like, so having those qualities is very, very useful. It's not to say that I negate other things. Like my personal background has a lot to do with strength training. Yeah. And I still do it myself, and I still want to teach it to other people, and I still think there's some people where the stretching thing should very much take a backseat to just strengthening things. Yeah. So it's not negating thing. It's not negating the strength thing or negating sports training. It's just saying that the stretching and the qualities you can put into it is a very, very nice addition to most people who never have any way to explore that.
I mean, it's a very difficult thing as a trainer to do, to take that time to go like, all right, well, here's what I like to do and what I like to teach, and here's what you need to do.
Yes.
And I think, we kind of touched on that earlier, but for a lot of people, it's for a lot of trainers, you almost kind of want to just do what you enjoy doing and kind of create almost a mini-me version of yourself with how you train, rather than, right, yes, you want these goals and you train to these.
Yes.
And I think that's
it's a huge problem. Of course, there will be some people, a lot of people will seek you out because they see something in you and they want that thing. Yeah. But it's not, even if they are like that, it's often they don't need that thing. They need something else. They might not be able to see the thing that they need, but oftentimes it's very, very plain. And that's the difference between want and need.
Yes, yes.
And that ties into some of the things that I would like to explore going forward, like the interface between stretching people and making people stronger, and getting people to see that they're both important and they both need to be developed. But for some of the people that are coming to me, they're asking for one thing where really they need the other thing. Even if they're really interested in exploring stretching, it's like, yeah, but you're going to run into obstacles, especially if you don't have the strength. Like some stretches, stretching is not a strength endeavor per se, but it definitely it does build strength at end range.
Well, certain stretches, I mean, I've tried to explain this to certain people as well, where certain stretches are, no matter how you want to explain it, they are a strength move.
Yeah, you do contractions at end range.
I mean, the classic example I always give is the middle splits. And I use for anyone who doesn't know, a Japanese handstand is what I equate the middle splits to. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's basically doing a handstand with your arms as wide as you can before your head touches the floor. That's essentially what you do in a middle splits. And for anyone who's not familiar with anatomy, your right and your left leg aren't connected.
No.
There's nothing connects them.
There's no muscles.
Yeah, there's a flap of skin and that's it. And it can stretch. If anyone wants to look on YouTube, you can see people getting hip surgeries who are 90 plus, and the doctors just throw the leg over the head and away they go.
Yeah.
So you're flexible. Everyone is flexible, but learning how to use that range and strengthening that range is massively important. And the middle splits, anyone who's worked on them for any amount of time will understand how difficult they are. I mean, I feel like I've had a harder workout after doing a middle split session than I do after doing heavy deadlifts, for example. And I think, like you're saying, and it's fantastic to hear people talk about it, that relationship between stretching and flexibility is so important. Because I've seen some people who are incredibly flexible, like almost rubbery, and then you go, and then they're like, oh, but here's hurting or this is hurting, and you see how certain movements are very weak.
For 1 year of actually doing all that stuff.
Don't stretch.
Don't stretch. It's also like if you have people who are weak.
Yes.
Oftentimes they will actually. I'm not saying you should, but I'm like, if you do some basic strength training and you get a little bit stronger, then you can also, very often you can get deeper into stretches, simply because there's this inhibition in the body from being weak. The body will go, you're weak, you're trying to get into a range you cannot control, we will not let you go into that range. So definitely there's a minimum amount of strength work that's very, very useful to do if you want to explore stretching, if you want to work on your body. Yeah.
And I mean, probably for me, like the main reason that I explored the strength side of it so much is through the combat athlete side of things, and that like take like the front splits and a high kick. That if you want to have the classic Van Damme, standing on one leg with the leg up in the air, that is very much strength.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously there's a massive flexibility element to it too, but if you want to do those high kicks, there is an element of strength to it, and I think for people to understand obviously again this comes back to being a trainer, but to understand what your mission is for what it is you're trying to do is very difficult for some people to kind of grasp.
Yeah, I think that's also what's setting apart a good trainer and a not good trainer.
Yeah.
Like if you have an appreciation for, okay, I have this person in front of me and I need to figure out who that person is, where they are in relation to their goals, also where their goals depart from reality and from what's useful in the long run, and like having those conversations with them and like maybe petting their ego enough that they will actually like maybe giving them stuff that they probably shouldn't do, but like they will only do the workout if you give them that stuff, so you give them a little bit of that thing. But yeah, like talking to people and actually like figuring out what's actually going on.
Yeah. Yes.
Is
number one.
No, it's humongous, and I know going back to the pattern thing. So obviously, like patterns apply to the physical body. It applies to flexibility, to posture, to gesture, but it equally and more so applies to habits. So people will have a certain way of going about things, and there will be a pattern to it. And I know Dave, my dear colleague and friend, he will say that if you're dealing with people, you are very, like, to the nth degree, you're dealing with their patterns. So if you're training people, and you have this person coming to you, they have these problems, you want to move them forward in some way. They have something they want to achieve, and you look at them and go, okay, these are the things that we need to do. But then you also need to engage that pattern, you need to engage the way that they behave. And I'm sure like everyone who has friends, has family, has a girlfriend, all these things, like they run up against people in the way that they behave, and you go like, why are you doing this crazy thing? Like, it's not a rational way to go about things, but then like people aren't that way. Like they have a certain way to do things, so you have to actually, okay, what is that thing I have in front of me, and how do I effect some change on it? And I think you said earlier, like people that does not want to change, you can't actually change them. And I'd say that it's not entirely true, but it's 99.9 something true.
I mean, it's I had a fellow trainer brought up I love these kind of like thought experiments for people who train other people.
Yeah.
He brought up a fantastic one. He said, right, let's pick a person. We'll say, I don't know, randomly, we'll say a 30-year-old woman.
Yeah.
She works an office job, and she wants to, I don't know, we'll pick something random, deadlift her body weight. Right? We'll set out a program for her. Right? Okay, we set that program out. Now, she has a child. Now set out the program for her. He said it's those things that we as trainers need to think about, and that's why for me, like the kind of questionnaire I give someone when they're training is very in depth, because let's say you want to achieve some advanced flexibility goal like a front splits. If I'm saying, right, you need to do an hour and a half of whatever every night, whereas you need to go and pick up the kids and bring home the laundry and do whatever. Exactly.
And you're asking for failure.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's
As simple as that.
that's training people. That's training people. That's why like you can have this idea of an ideal program, and then you go like you look at that person and go, you write that program, and then you roll it up into a paper ball and you throw it away, and then you go back and you write something else. Yeah, and like you can, like feedback is a good thing. Like you can look at the person, you can go, okay, here's my best idea of how things should work. Now you go do that thing, and then you come back to me and see how it works. Or you might not even say that. You just give them the program and you just like you watch them, you see what happens. Yeah, but like you can have all these ideas, and then reality is different.
That's for sure. I mean, it's a big hurdle as well. Not even as a trainer, but even as someone who's training in whatever discipline, that life happens.
Yeah.
And it's something I always say to people. They're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't do X, Y, or Z," and you're like, "It's okay.
Yeah.
Life happens." You need to understand that, and it's why that long-term thing is so important.
Yes, it's also So and as a trainer, you need to appreciate that. You need to write it in, and you need to figure out, okay, if this person doesn't get the splits in 3 months, it's okay.
Yeah, they have another 3 months
after. You also need to be able to appreciate it when you see that person and you engage with them, and you can see that happening. So you can see, okay, this person has a high stress. Maybe she has a history of doing exercise things, and then she does it for 2 months, and then she falls off, and then you go, okay, there is this behavior, there's this pattern, that we need to.
This physical pattern.
This physical pattern, or this mental pattern, or this whatever pattern that we need to correct for. Yeah, and that's like, I don't think you can only train a human being, a person, physically.
Yeah.
I think you have to, like, to some extent, and you can be more or less successful, and you can go more in depth, but you have to engage people more broadly to get success, and you get at least the thing. So I'm not only interested in training people physically, I'm interested in, as much as I can, training the whole human being and actually effecting some change that's a positive for them where they are at. I remember listening to, what's his name? Tom Myers, who he wrote the book Anatomy Trains, and I think he was trained by Ida Rolfer, and he talks about helping people or making people more functional in their own terms. Which I like that expression, like just nudging people along whichever way you can.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like if I'm interested in powerlifting or strength training, gymnastics and handstands, and flexibility training, all these things. But then some of the time, like some of the things are probably not what they need to do. So I need to, like, as a trainer, you need to like look at the thing and like, how can we just push it in the right direction?
Nudge it along.
And that will probably look very, very different to different people. Like some people you have to go like, okay, it's like very gently, and some people you have to go like, whack, no, you do this thing.
It's funny, like I've actually had that conversation with people I've trained, where some people, they want to train, but they want to be forced to train. As mad as that sounds.
No, not really. Like there's something about motivation. Like I know, so I've spent nearly a month in this house, so I know like you have the motivation to just go, okay, I'm going to train now. I have the same thing. Like I can get myself up and like, okay, I'm going to do that thing. Where other people is like, yeah, they need to be forced. Some people only need to be forced for a certain period, and then they were like, okay, I'll do the thing.
See, I've had a great conversation with friends of mine about this kind of topic, where the easiest way to explain it is, how do you explain someone something that benefits them when they've never had it benefit them?
You have to show them.
Yeah, but then how do you convince them to do it?
You can't convince people unless there is an initial level of interest. You might get something like obliquely.
Yeah.
Like you might affect change in one of their friends, and their friend go like, "This is really the best thing," like da 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 da, and then they might go, "Okay, I'll try that thing."
Yeah.
But like trying to convince people, and it's one of those things like, if people don't want to change, they won't change. It's also it's a little bit of a bad habit to try to convince people. Like it becomes this better knowing thing. Like you know how things are. I can't just see like how this is the right way to do things, which doesn't work. It doesn't work, and it paradoxically it pushes people away from that thing. So it's actually, if you have something that you're good at and you can see that it will benefit that person, you're almost obliged to not speak too much about that thing.
Yeah.
If they ask you, it's fine. You should talk about like da 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 da. But if not, you shouldn't try to convince them like, hey, I have this best thing ever. It's a funny balance.
No. Yeah, I mean it's and actually touching on the flexibility, and again coming back to Emmett Lewis wrote a great piece recently about and it's one thing that I Emmett is great at putting things eloquently that I struggle to put eloquently.
Yeah.
But
it's one of those gifts.
He really is. And a great piece that he explained was that, and for anyone listening and for anyone who's tried to get flexible and who has tried, and now this is not disparaging any system or anything, if it works, superb. But Emmett just said that in the Western world, yoga is viewed as the pinnacle of flexibility. If you want to get flexible, you go and do yoga. And the thing is, and anyone who's gone to a gym and tried to pick up weights, you might understand that there's certain things that you respond to better than other people. And it's the same with flexibility. Some people will do astoundingly well at yoga, and some people won't. Because their body just responds differently. Because humans are different. And, Emma kind of goes on to explain that, yoga is this gold standard, and a lot of people just go, right, well, it doesn't work, I'm not flexible, that's my life, I'm done. And you need to understand that, no, there are other systems, there are other ways out there doing things, and you just need to explore what it is that works. And if you really want to pursue that, I would highly recommend that you look at physical alchemy, you look at various of the systems, and obviously I'm a bit biased here, but do look at physical alchemy. It is really good.
No, you're not biased.
No, not at all. But it offers so much to people, and I know you guys don't really like the term, but it's offering that understanding of what it is your body does. I think it's phenomenal. And I think the pinnacle of any trainer, in my mind, is to be obsolete, is to train someone enough where they can understand what it is they need to do, and then they can just go off and do it.
Yeah.
And it's a terrible business model. I think that's
it's horrible. And then again, it's not, because like if you contemplate it a little bit, there's thousands and thousands, millions of people that need training, that aren't being trained, or that's being trained very, very badly. And there's only a few handful of people who has gone through a process and then made the trainer obsolete. And even those people will tend to hang around the trainer and make it worth the trainer's while. And that's the kind of people, like that's the kind of process that I went through with Dave.
Yeah.
So I trained with Dave, and going from a student to becoming a teacher myself. And then once you go through that, then I can help Dave a little bit now. Where if you're a student, you can't really, you can do very much, and you just like
kind of observe.
Yeah, you can observe, and you, to some extent, it costs energy for the teacher to train other people.
Yeah.
So if you're a trainer and you have a system, you very much need people who are on your level.
Yeah.
Because it also makes it, we're sitting here having a nice conversation, it makes it interesting to have conversations, and you can take things further if you have people who are on your level.
Yeah.
And I can research one thing, Dave can research another thing, Craig can research a third thing, and we can sit there and we can compare notes, and we go, okay, that didn't work, didn't work. So, yeah, there's a little bit of that anxiety of like, ooh, I mustn't show too much of my stuff, because then other people will take it and I'll be horrible, which is a little bit yeah, it's not the best way to, and it doesn't make for good night's sleep either. So,
and it's, again, without naming names, it's something.
I'm looking forward to what's coming now.
Oh yeah, it's something within the umbrella term of the fitness / movement / whatever the hell you want to call it world, because I hate labels on things. Just get out and do stuff, folks. That a lot of people, and actually, perfect example is traditional martial arts, where what you were taught is very much kept a secret. You know, I will show you this super secret kick and super secret punch, and no one else must know about it. And if you show your friends, you'll be kicked out of the club. And people will listen to this and think that's bloody ridiculous. I know people who that has happened to.
Yeah. It sounds very Chinese to me.
Well, I won't name names, but but within the fitness world, the same thing happens, and you will see people who say, "Well, I want everyone in the world to do what I do, and let's go do it." And then the person is almost unapproachable, and you can't even fathom as to how you're going to train with this person. Whereas what I love about what you guys do, about what Craig does, about what Kit does, about what you do, is that you're very much like, well, here it is. Look at it. You know, I will explain to you how to do it, but obviously if you want to get a deep understanding of it, then come and train with me.
Yeah.
And I'm very much the same. If anyone asks me questions, I mean, I had a guy contact me during the week, and I spent just like 2 days just getting like back and forth, giving the guy information, because as a trainer, you spend years trying to find this information, and that's, I think, as Ida Portal put it, you develop a bullshit filter. You got to siphon out all that useless shit, and then go like, here's the things that are useful to me and useful to people who I train with. And yeah, there's a lot of bullshit in the fitness world.
There is, and that's part of it, and that's one of my, just mentioning one influence from the things that I've read. So I've read a lot. Like I spent the larger part of my medical degree reading things that didn't have anything to do with medicine. Went through hundreds of books. And one of the things that stuck with me was the author Taleb, Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who wrote. I'll see if I can remember them all, but Anti-Fragile, The Black Swan, Things That Gain from Disorder. And I think it's just, there's another book coming out it's like this month or this week, called Skin in the Game. So I think he has like 4 books out now, and it's like a complete whole. And so he talks about many things, but one of the things that he talks about is having that bullshit filter and having that capacity to like seeing which things are true, and like the people that you listen to, and so if you randomly read books, like you just went to a bookstore and you read books by random, like the shit that you would read wouldn't be very high quality. Whereas if you know certain authors, how they,
it allows you to narrow that approach.
Exactly, and you become much more keen at looking at things, and like, okay, this is the way. It's much quicker.
Well, I mean, just to explain my own process to people, I had this very simplistic approach. I mean, I was, my own background, obviously you did medicine in college. I did computer science. Same. I didn't enjoy it whatsoever, but
That's you do.
Yeah. But I think anyone who understands exactly what they want to do for the rest of their life at 18, they're fair play. You're a very different individual to me. But that pushed me to MMA and into jiu-jitsu, and I'm on the road that I am now.
Yeah, down the rabbit hole.
And the thing was that I did that, didn't really enjoy what I was doing, but it pushed me to develop who I am and what it is I'm trying to do. And I mean, when you look at like any sort of system, it has to evolve, and you have to like think, right,
Words.
I gotta put this right. I need words, people.
Yeah.
You might not know what it is you're trying to do. You might not know what it is you want to do, but with time, you're going to get a bit of understanding as to what that is. And with what you guys do, what I'm getting at is that things need to evolve. You need to understand that, right, here's where I am now, but I might be unhappy with what it is. And when it comes to things like flexibility, mobility, whatever it is, it takes time, it takes patience, and you need to understand that, you have a starting goal, you have a finish post, but it's going to take a long ass time. And what I figured out very quickly in college, and what my kind of lecturers pointed us towards, was that you need to look at who the best people in the world are. And that for me was, right, I sat down and I went into, without getting too long and drawn out with it, I looked at who the best UFC champions were, because I was mad into martial arts and mixed martial arts. I looked at George St. Pierre and he went, right, Olympic weightlifting is great, and weightlifting is great, and gymnastics is great, and flexibility is great. So I went, I should probably learn about this stuff. So I went, looked at it, and went, right, well, who's really good at this stuff? And, certain names will keep coming up.
Yeah.
And no matter what it is you do, whether you play piano or you dance or whatever the pursuit you have in life is, look at the best people in the world and figure out what it is they do and why they do it, and then figure out who taught them. And obviously a lot of people will know me with talking about parkour. A big one for me is Buster Keating. A lot of people don't think about him as a parkour guy, but what he did was very much parkour before it had a name. And that's how I found.
This is the old
black and white movies of
riding up and down.
With the bowler hat and the umbrella and falling off stuff and doing insane stunts before wires were even a thing. But that's how I found Kit, and that's how I found Physical Alchemy, that's how I found you guys. That's how I found Craig before I found you guys, because I went to myself, I said, right, who's the best people in the world when it comes to mobility and flexibility? Because there is more information now, but when I went to look, there was virtually nothing really. It was, stretch your hamstrings was touch your toes. That was all you get. So I went and looked, and Kit's name kept coming up. And I went, right, let's see who Kit is. And I investigated that. And then through that, I heard about Bendy Dave.
You heard about Bendy Dave?
Bendy Dave. Then I heard about Craig, because obviously Craig had an interest in martial arts. So I went, this is pretty interesting.
You're aware that Dave is not Bendy Dave?
I know, Dave isn't Bendy Dave. Yeah. There's the other Bendy Dave. There's so many Daves. It's so confusing.
It's the Australian thing.
I know.
I'm just shorting shit out.
Just shorting shit down, and then one's Bendy Dave, another's Dave. And obviously, through learning about Kit, I learned about, alright, well, the flexibility people. And I mean, the easiest way to figure out what it is you want to do is look at the best people in the world and figure out why those systems work and why those things work.
Yeah, retrofitting shit.
Yeah. And for me, that was, I put massive weight on in my squats and deadlifts and all that through looking at the Westside Barbell guys, because whatever people want to say about Lou Simmons and all those guys, they have some of the strongest people in the world. And Kit has
the
strongest people in the world.
It's like,
you've heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. No.
And
that's just a side note there. That's the thing. You can have. We talked about theories before, and you have physiology and strength training, and have an idea about why things work, and you can Then there's a system what system you're talking about, like Louis Simmons.
Yeah, the conjugate method and all that.
All that stuff. And if you have those kind of results, then you can have your fine looking theory, and you have those results, and it's just okay, this works. It's just you can have people who are no, but physiology, and it's look at the man,
the results,
the results. So, yeah.
But that's also an important one, and why we come back to that bullshit filter that. With certain methods, again, we won't name anyone, apart from a certain Eastern European weightlifting team, and if anyone knows who I'm referring to, you know who I'm referring to, where you get incredible results with massive burnout and massive negative results for other people who weren't invited along.
Yeah.
And that happens. And that again comes back to the best in the world often are the best in the world because they will sacrifice anything to be the best in the world.
Yeah.
So you need to see what's the best fit for you, and I think that's why a system such as physical alchemy, such as whatever else you want to insert title as, is so important to look at and figure out, all right, what is it that I need to do and what is it that will improve my life? And
yeah, like being in the, like if you're a sporting person, then obviously, yeah, I'm okay with whiskey for Nathan. So if you're a sporting person, that's definitely a good way to go about things. And like you only have so much time to train. You only have so much time to train, and you're a certain age, and like you need to put in the hours. So if you can learn from the people who are really really good and like what did they do to get to that point. Obviously, like there will be little things that maybe you can improve upon that, but if they're the best in the world, they did something really really correct.
Yeah.
We were talking about the office person before. They can't squat and wants to play with his grandchildren. Then looking at Chinese weightlifting or the conjugate method is not where you would start.
Yeah.
And you need to ask other questions, and you still, regardless of this, you still need to engage the person. You still need to engage the
individual.
I'm going to say that word again. Patterns. You need to look at the pattern. You need to look at how that person is.
Yeah.
Like what drives that person, what works, what doesn't work. Is there something that's repeating, which is like, okay, if I address that thing, then maybe things work better.
And I think it's an unusual thing in that the world that we're in has kind of become, we try to treat the cause much rather than the symptom. That we're trying to figure out why is it that things are going the way they are for you, rather than right, we'll just X equals Y. Like you want to touch your toes, you do this.
Yeah, that's part of why. There's a lot that goes into it, but that's part of the reason why I opted not to follow medicine, because it is very much just it's trying to fix things when they've really gone wrong, rather than doing preventative stuff and like actually looking at people and like the system is not set up in a way that it actually helps people very much. And like there's a lot of good people that works in that system and that tries to do their best by it.
For sure.
But it's just like the faults that are built into that system are quite egregious, which doesn't really invite to just like how there's this person, he has these problems. Yeah, sure, like there's medicine and physiology involved in those problems, but yeah, I'd rather in fact change elsewhere and in different ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's still about that person and how can you help that person.
I think that's a perfect spot to end up.
Okay. I'm happy with that. Whiskey.
Sláinte it, buddy. Or
cheers.
Cheers. Or skål. Danish?
Skål.
Skål. There we go.
Yeah. Very good.
So,
very good.
If people want to get in touch, how will they find you?
Well, there's a few different things. Like there's the website Physical Alchemy at physicalalchemy.com.au. So that's the Australian.com.au. Cool. Then I have a teacher's professional Facebook page, which I think is, if you look at Frederik Beck, FrederikBeckPA, should come up. And then I have an Instagram profile which is the same. So if you just look up Physical Alchemy on the Google, it should
perfect.
Someone, so. And
I'll make sure to link everything in the description of this podcast and video. Thanks a million, Fred, for coming on. Absolute pleasure. It was great chatting with you. Thanks everyone for listening. Peace.